So welcome again to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been let's see, since April that we met live in the EMEA market in Tarragona, Spain. So it's good to see everybody. We have some new folks who are new to the We Work Well family. So welcome and thank you for joining us. Just to be clear, what We Work Well is that we are the premier hosted buyer procurement event for wellness, hospitality, spa, and fitness industries. We have 3 events happening for spa this year. The first in March in Chateau Elan, Georgia. The second in June in Split, Croatia for the EMEA market. And the last in November in California at Westlake Village. I'll put a slide up at the end that has those details, but if you'd like to participate as a buyer or supplier, we'd love to have you. So it's important that we talk about business, right? It's January. It's time to think about what are we doing for the future. And so we have some awesome panelists here who I'll introduce in a moment. What's happening in the world? Same, right? Less pandemic and still no lack of drama. You know, the World Economic Forum was last week, and there's very upbeat reports on business. I saw that the CEO of EMEA for Citibank, David Livingston, said that despite the challenges, they expect significant growth still to happen in the European market. We sent out a survey last week that many of you participated in. And, you know, no surprise, the number one issue on everyone's list was staffing. And, you know, and when it came time to talk about potential challenges, of course, for Europe, the war and political uncertainty are there, but economic uncertainty was even stronger. So I'm going to ask my panelists to turn on their cameras and join us live, and I will introduce them. Thank you again for joining us. So we have Emlyn Brown, the Global Vice President of Wellbeing for Accor, joining us from Miami today. We have Sara Codner, the Senior Director of Spa and Wellness for Mandarin Oriental, based in Dubai. And we have Kent Richards, Corporate Operations Director for Six Senses. And I can't even say where Kent is based because it's probably on an airplane for most of the time. So we're going to go around. I'm going to ask each of them to give us a 2 or 3 minute sort of synopsis of the business climate as they see it. We're going to begin with Emlyn, going in alphabetical order. So Emlyn, if you could unmute yourself.
Hey.
And just tell us what you're seeing at Accor for 2023. Where do you see your business going?
I think probably the best to start with how 2022 was, which was a significant rebound from where we were back to 2019 levels. In fact, 15 to 18% above our 19 performances, particularly in key markets, NCA, EMEA as well, in terms of that, which is reflective of, you know, the increased ADRs and increased rates we've seen and increased occupancies in those regions, combined with a pretty significant World Cup bounce in some of our key regions like Qatar, for example, where Accor is very strongly present. Slightly slower, obviously, in Southeast Asia and naturally China. But, you know, the NCA and US market was a significant rebound and a significant uptick on business. So 23 is going to be hard to continue that. I think there's one thing I would say is that we're probably going to see the end of revenge travel. I'm speaking to those working in hospitality and hotel business. And so the ideas of quite exorbitant rates or pushing rates that we did over the course of the post-pandemic revenge travel era, I think will slightly come to an end. We are seeing some headwind naturally in terms of inflationary costs and concerns about costs of living, particularly within Europe. And I think that will impact some of our thought processes about how we're pricing and what we're doing. But at the same time, you know, for Middle East region, for example, we'll definitely see the return of Chinese travel and PRC coming back into the Middle East. I think we'll see a significant uptick in that travel to Dubai and to Qatar and different locations like that. So weirdly, in one way, you know, for EMEA, for example, one challenge is replaced by a new opportunity, right? As the market start to evolve and start to develop. I think that the continued penetration and thoughts about wellness, well-being, the aspiration for it, the reason to click through and book a hotel or to provide treatments remains very much the front of people's minds, and the desire for people to take part and participate in wellness, well-being, spa, beauty practices will continue to be buoyant. But I think the question mark will come now much more about slightly more value for money conversation, and a little bit more selective in terms of when they do things and what they do, rather than this sort of grandiose splurge that we've seen over the last 12 months.
I feel like when the pandemic began to end, and if you had the word spa on your door, I mean, you could not keep clients back.
No.
And we've seen that continue. 2022, most businesses had their best years above 2019. And I have to add that in the survey I sent out, I asked if you saw 2023 business being greater, the same, or less than 2022. Everyone said more. So hopefully that is true. All right, thanks for that, Emlyn. Let's go to Sara. Sara's based in Dubai at Mandarin Oriental, but she has been in other Mandarin properties around the world. You've been in Dubai, what, 5 years now?
5 years now, yeah, since the pre-opening. And a lot of what Emlyn said, I can actually mirror as well. I mean, Dubai was very, very fortunate that we were only closed for probably about 4 months, and we rebounded massively afterwards. 2021 was a very strong year for us. We had a lot of local guests, obviously not being able to travel, so local guests were our biggest clientele, and then we had the staycations. They then turned into hotel guests, and then the staycation business for us was very strong. 2022 was extremely strong for us. November was probably our biggest revenue month to date since opening.
Wow.
Dubai, I think, was hoping that we were going to get a lot of business from the World Cup. So a lot of hotels in Dubai, and I think Emlyn, you'll be able to back me up on this one. The rates were astronomical, and the travelers actually didn't come. So I think Dubai really outpaced themselves. We were still extremely busy. I think we were fortunate enough, not only here, and I think Teresa is on the call as well from Emirates Palace. We had a lot of business from Russia. So our main clientele from October, November, December was actually the Russian market. In December, we found still a lot of expats coming in for Christmas, New Year, but I think a little bit quieter the third week of December. But generally, Dubai, and again, I'll mirror what Emlyn was saying, I think 2023, we're on target for having our biggest month revenue-wise to date. We're having huge revenues this month for the spa as well as the hotel and F&B as well. And I think the Dubai really bounced back very quickly, and I think it's going to go from strength to strength. And again, with the Chinese visitors opening up, we're already seeing a little bit of travelers from Asia, and I think that will continue to grow. Yeah. So, and our therapists are, and I'll talk about it a little bit later from other hotels, but yeah, we've had to beg, steal, and borrow from other properties.
You and the rest of the world. Well, thank goodness we're seeing the Chinese traveler. We've been waiting for that outbound market for what, 1.5 years now, and everyone is missing it. I think most especially in your market. Yeah. So thank you, Sara. Kent.
Yep.
Tell us where you are at Six Senses with the year behind, the year ahead, and just a short summation of what's happening for you.
Sure. I think, like everyone, 2022 was an incredible year. We had individual locations that were still closed up. We only opened in Cambodia towards the end of last year. China was very, very quiet for us, I'm sure, like for everybody. And even now that it's open, the negative reporting in the media doesn't help. About the last I heard was 250 million people are HIV positive, not HIV, COVID positive. And that doesn't help for the market either. So there are still a couple of areas. Bhutan is one where people have not flooded back yet. But in general, 2022 was really an amazing year, not only for business regarding the guest, but also from a point of view of developers. During those COVID years, we signed more new locations than we ever expected. And that's why now, you know, I'm sure, Lisa, is why you talk about me being on a plane, because it's more than ever. I mean, this year, well, we ended last year with 28 hotels and resorts. We'll end this year with minimum 35. And we'll be opening up to 10 to 12 a year as we move forward. You know,
that's a lot.
It has another whole nucleus of issues that we need to attend to. And yes, Sarah, you know, we're already looking for therapists, and as we grow, we're thinking where they're going to come from. But from a business angle, both in a guest perspective and in landing new projects, it's really running at full steam.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that's good to know. I mean, going from what, 28 to 35 properties, that's a massive jump.
In 1 year. Yeah, we finished 28. This year we already, you know, that's not only building new properties, we have transition. I'm sure you know, Six Senses Varna took over an existing property in India, so that's counted. But this year will be Varna, Crans-Montana, Rome, Kanahura in Maldives, London, and Grenada.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes, like I said, Kent will be on a plane.
Yeah, I'm on a plane.
All right, thank you for that, Kent. So the outlook is rosy for most of us. Let's talk more in detail about what particulars you're working on. I'm going to go back to Emlyn for this, and we'll circle back around. Ken, if you want to hang out for a moment, that'd be great. Emlyn, you are operating the most properties of anybody on our panel today. How many spas are in operation around the world for Accor?
Luxury and premium, 750, 1,200 health clubs. And out of that, I would suggest 75 wellness destinations, which I'll call semi-destinations to wellness destinations, and 13 thalassotherapy locations. And just to put some mark on that, I don't operate all those because that's an impossible job, right? So I mean, the remit that we have within Accor with my team is probably slightly different to maybe Sarah's and to Kent's, but certainly we are, you know, working at scale within wellness and well-being for sure.
So, you know, that's a massive challenge to operate a global brand like that when you've got brand standards and protocols, but also we have consumers that want the local flavor, right? They want what's authentic. I mean, how do you deliver local authenticity on a global scale? Not that anyone listening here is going to go out and do what you're doing, but it is a really interesting challenge.
Yeah, look, I get that. I think that, you know, we're working centrally, and I'm pretty fortunate for the fact that I work within the brand and marketing division of the organization rather than the operational side. And I'll explain a bit more about that reason why I think it's good in a moment. But it means that we're really at the beginning of the faucet to then set and work with brand leadership and marketing teams to make sure the ideas, the sort of the concepts and thought process about what that spa and wellbeing experience should be are really embedded within the DNA of the brand. And that's probably the most important thing, number one. I think number two is to make sure that in the organization, we've worked very hard with thought leadership, education to make wellness a company imperative beyond the walls of the spa, but also beyond the education of our spa director, right? So GMs, DOSMs, and those people. And I know it's being very hotel specific right now, but that's important that you get that information and knowledge out to people so that when you're deploying and executing well-being within the property, everyone's sort of taking part. The idea of localization, I think that, you know, within Accor, some of our brands, I would call it hard brand, and let's say Fairmont is a very much a hard luxury brand with a strong understanding of well-being and let's say a strong DNA for wellness and spa and CI and so on. But that's not always the case in most of our brands. I mean, in some cases we mostly set a sort of direction, set ideas, set the thought process, and you can really work within that periphery to create your experiences locally. And I think that gives a lot of authenticity within it. So, you know, for us, it's about providing the tools that allow people to execute, but not being over dictatorial. We can't be with the scale that we're working at, right? It's a very different thing. So I'd say 60% fixed and 40%, you know, localized, and that's sort of where we want to get to with some of our brands. The higher the luxury scale we go, probably the more fixed it becomes, because there needs to be a more stronger standardization and understanding about quality and assurance and so on. But I think this idea of, really fixing and saying you must do it this way with SOPs and everything else is not a little bit old. It has to be there. But you've got to give people freedom to be creative on the ground in order to deliver it. If they're going to own the commercials, then they have to also own the other parts too, right? Within a certain bandwidth of elements that you're setting for it. And that's how I think is the best way to work.
That makes sense. You had mentioned when you and I talked about your focus on internal and external guests. Can we talk a bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. Look, let's put resorts to one side, but I think that one of the things that happened in the last 18 months is the conversation piece about maximizing income per square meter, the role that spa and fitness plays within the hotel, and people looking to generate what was previously seen as amenities or areas purely for hotel guests, and the power they can have for local community, right? And I think that in many cases, I don't want to be too controversial, but we hid behind the idea of hotel guest capture as being the be all and end all, and it stopped us, prevented us actually becoming what we really should be, which is drawing in local communities. So the conversations we are having within Accor is, look, I want to know about your external capture, your activity, your social media planning, your external reach. Your hotel guest for me is there. It's a base. It's not really a measure for me from a KPI. I'm not going to reward you on that so much anymore. I am going to reward you much more about external business and what's coming into the door, because it resonates so much more with the income and performance of the hotel. At the same time, I think that we've sort of allowed facilities to be only for hotel guests, and in many cases they're underutilized and underused, right? So indoor swimming pools, aquatonic pools, thermal areas, and particularly fitness. And so our conversation is, come and be part, as a hotel guest, come and be part of an active and dynamic fitness environment that has membership and benefit from that, right? It's a bit the same as a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant and it's empty, you'd rather go to one that's full. If you look at the way that we're actually approaching things like lifestyle hotels, like SLS, 25 Hour, these sort of places, they're all about drawing community into the hotel. And we talk about communal bars, communal co-working, communal lobby areas, experiential restaurants. There's nothing more communal than fitness. And there's nothing more that can entice people in than spa and well-being. I think it's an underutilized and underleveraged asset within sales and marketing. So we want to flip the narrative and certainly change the semantics of what's important for our spa and wellness leadership to be focusing on over the course of their commercial planning.
Emlyn, I love that. As people that travel, we go to many beautiful locations, right, that have great amenities, and you're there as a guest and you think, boy, I wish I lived here. I wish I could use this more. Well, why not, right? It's this amazing place that you've built with all these great things to enjoy, and yet you only limit it to the guests. Now, I understand there are exclusive times when that needs to be the case, but especially in more suburban and urban locations, you're going to benefit by bringing in your community and becoming sort of a central hub. F&B benefits, meetings, then people want to go to that place. And I want to also add that I love hearing what you said about fitness and sport. Global wellness trends for 2023 are coming out next week, and sneak peek is that's going to factor in what you just said. So just
to lead on to what Sarah's talked about this, a little bit before. For us, it's about basing your commercial success based on what you're drawing in from local community. You asked about localization and local flavor. Locals coming into your business is the absolute testament to that. And that's where people want to be, right? If you look at the success of lifestyle hotels or Soho House, for example, in Berlin, other locations, it's because the locals go there that people want to be there. Right. And so the same sort of mentality, I think, has to permeate through the hotel industry, whereby this part of the business, it can have the same dynamic of commercial thought process as a restaurant, as a co-working space. And that's still got a bit more work to do. But we're trying to push the semantics of that and make that absolute primary conversation in the sales and marketing commercial planning.
Well said. So I want you to also add a little bit about your point about driving higher yield and your focus overall. We'll get more into the details of marketing later, but you mentioned to me that you were more focused on rituals and experiences than just individual services.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on or sort of tell people what they should or shouldn't be doing, but I still see us in many cases, and many operators selling massages or selling treatments not selling experience, not selling lengthier packages, not having the what's the word I would say, the confidence to actually sell their experience at a higher rate and a higher price point, and package together all of their different opportunities into one area, right? Because within a hotel, luxury or premium, you've got pool, you've got fitness, you've got F&B, you've got bar, you've got spa, you've got treatment. There is one part of a 3-hour ritual, and I think people are much more inclined to buying experiences. And I still see us worrying about competition about their price point, which is a non-starter within a hotel environment, because you're not really competing against anyone else but yourself, right? And then looking to create the most attractive experiential element, right, that combines all your opportunities within the hotel. Mandarin and Oriental do it very well. If you look at the way that they advertise and market themselves as a hotel, it's always about food and beverage, it's always about spa, and there's always great combinations of those two things to create a half-day experience. And London, for example, still remains one of the leading destinations for well-being for that type of element that takes place. And chapeau to them. There's a lot more that can be done about that, I think, in our industry, to have the confidence to be selling a luxury ritual and experience at the right price point, rather than being concerned about, is my massage price too much? You need to think about yield and maximizing the yield and using the facilities that you have to a far higher degree and charging for it appropriately, right? Because I think that, we can be a bit more confident now. And if you can sell a lengthier experience and keep people in the hotel where everyone benefits from F&B to bar to spa to wherever it's going to be, everyone's going to win, and you're going to get a lot more power behind it. It's also a lot easier to start selling and promote those experiences for a longer period of time. What I find within spa commercial planning, sometimes in my leadership, is that they do a promotion for 2 weeks, they go, oh, that doesn't work, and then do another one for 2 weeks.
Right.
Doesn't work because I've got no idea what's going on. You've got to let things burn. You've got to run things for a quarter, for a longer period of time. Tie yourself into things that are ritualistic and people understand, and not be worried about that. It's not about constantly changing your plan. It's about sticking to it, but putting the resource behind it to making that your number one thing you want to sell and want to drive. And I think you can do that well.
It's so true what you say, because everyone's so busy. I mean, everyone is so busy. All of you listening, you have 1,000 emails in your inbox and calls and places to be, and we're grateful you're spending this hour with us. So when you run a promo and you think in 2 weeks we haven't had any people, I mean, come on, it takes time. But I applaud your focus on that. I do think that this is one benefit we all received from COVID, is around pricing. We were all looking at each other and kind of creeping up, and sort of that has gone out the window, and people are charging what they need to. How many spas have raised their prices once, twice, 3 times in the last 3 years? And we're still busy. So we do need to be aware of that. Those are great points, Emlyn. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask Sara to come on back, and Emlyn will chill out for a minute. Thank you. And Sara, you and I talked about what's happening at Mandarin in Dubai and the greater Middle East, challenges with staffing for sure, but also what you're doing in terms of marketing and how you're creating an environment that attracts staff.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I just wanted to mention, I really, really enjoyed, Emlyn, your piece just now, and there are so many things that I really resonated with. And I think one of the things that I really resonated with very much is actually creating the experiences. And since COVID, it's a lot more about emotions. And people want to actually enjoy their experience. They come back and we create memories for guests. And I think that's what they take back, and that's what they come back for again and again. You can have a great facility, but you're actually then creating the memories for them, and the emotional engagement with your guests in order for them to come back. And then that leads me on really with the staffing. I mean, as everyone knows, since there were a lot of companies and businesses post-COVID that unfortunately we had to make colleagues redundant. And then I think colleagues themselves really took the time and just thought, okay, what do I really want to do with my life? They had all of this time off. And therapists, to be honest, the really good therapists could pick and choose where they wanted to go. And I think really that's been the big challenge for a lot of properties. We were actually very fortunate, and one of the things that we are very, very fortunate about, I mean, we have a lot of properties opening. I mean, we have Emirates Palace rebranding next month. We have Oman opening later on this year. We have a Riyadh rebranding as well. And of course, we still have Doha, and we've just announced Kuwait. So in the Middle East, staffing is going to be a big challenge for us. But one of the things we're very fortunate, and for example, Bodrum is very seasonal. So we're able to get what we call CEAs, which are cultural exchange ambassadors. So we're able to pull on resources from places like Bodrum when they close for season. We have Lake Como is the same as well. And Teresa also is up, she's on the call today. With Emirates Palace, and she needs the CEA support for her opening team, so that we can then send colleagues from Dubai or other properties in order to have all of the standards, to have all of the Mandarin Oriental experiences, to be able to let the team there really concentrate on the opening. So we're really fortunate in that respect. And we have, for example, now in Dubai, we have 3 therapists from Bodrum. We have some therapists from Thailand, and that we also can look at specializing therapists and really promoting these therapists. For example, Therapist of the Month. We have this amazing therapist, for example, from Thailand who specializes in this treatment, who not necessarily we would potentially offer on our current treatment menu. So it's really looking at, okay, what can you bring that's out of the ordinary that you don't necessarily offer, but these colleagues then have the strengths. And that's actually worked really well for us. And it really helps to motivate the other colleagues as well. In order, so for example, if I have colleagues, and actually this did happen a few weeks ago, we sent a colleague for 5 days over to Emirates Palace, and it really helps to motivate the team as well and have experiences of other properties. So that actually worked really well, not only for us but throughout the group.
Well, it's terrific that you have that resource, obviously, and you're the right size. I mean, if you had 200 spots, it might be almost harder to do that, but you're small enough that you know everybody and you can pull people from one to the other. And that's not a strategy or an option for your average day spa, but for you in a hotel group, it's awesome.
Or Emlyn's properties, that would be just near on impossible to be able to do. So we are really fortunate that we are small enough to be able to do that.
Right, brand standard is the same. People know what to do. The treatments are trained.
Exactly.
So you've told me that you really work to create sort of a community feel at work to keep staff happy. Could you elaborate on that just a bit, Sara? Yeah,
and I think, again, and I don't really mean to go back towards COVID, but I think COVID really opened a lot of our eyes to how we were potentially managing colleagues in the past and how we were all working together. And I think, there was lots of people that, were sent home, or lots of people were stuck in lockdown for 4 months, particularly in Dubai. They were not working. So, and I think it made us very much more aware of our colleagues and how we treated each other during the working day. We, as everyone knows, we spend more time at work than we do at home a lot of the time. And what we've tried to do, and I think we probably do very well, is becoming empathetic leaders. Having a lot of empathy with our colleagues, what they're going through, a lot of our colleagues lost family members through COVID. It was, and I think looking back, there's a lot of colleagues that are still dealing with the potential PTSD of COVID. I mean, we were fortunate enough that we went from zero guests to 100 guests literally overnight once we opened up. But again, there's that sense of, I haven't done anything for 4 months, and then ramping up. So we had to be very cognizant of how we were treating our colleagues and being empathetic, being caring, having that family community at work. And I think that's, for us, it's really paid off. We've had, particularly in Dubai, we're again very fortunate that over the last 5 years, our turnover has been very low. And I think that's a lot of the reason behind that is how we interact with our colleagues and how we treat our colleagues.
And I'm sure it's because you're an awesome boss, Sara. Come on. All right, thank you for that. We'll come back to you, but I would like to ask Kent to join us now. And Kent, you and I talked about the Six Senses guests, and you had them kind of chunked in a way that I thought was really interesting. Would you share that with us?
Sure. How we forward see the categories versus
Right.
now. Yeah, and again, you know, we are trying to move away from where COVID is, but COVID has affected many areas of the business. And what we always found pre-COVID is it was pretty equal as to which the numbers of guests that wanted to be left alone. They were coming to a Six Senses to eat, drink, be merry, party, you know, 5-star property. And the middle group would be curious. They've heard that we do more than F&B and the rest, and they want to come to find out how they can benefit and probably get a greater return by coming to Six Senses. And then we'd have the hardcore, you know, the ones that are already exercising every day, eating a certain plan. They've adopted a wellness lifestyle very well. And I can recall one of our owners saying to me once, but surely everyone who wants wellness comes to Six Senses, or if they want wellness, they'll come to Six Senses. And people were quite surprised to know that we had quite a large leave me alone following because of the locations as well. But what we found more and more later in 2022 and in 2023 is the amount of leave me alone has diminished.
Oh, interesting.
I think with all the PR and opening in more locations and everything, the public are viewing Six Senses a lot more and a lot more aware that we are a wellness destination in hospitality. You know, there's been so much media about the programs and about what we do for sustainability and for wellness that I think in some regards, leave me alone thinking, okay, maybe I won't fit in, which, you know, there's pros and cons. The numbers of people that are coming has significantly grown, but they are definitely more curious and hardcore than leave me alone. But maybe, and we're still to analyze it, maybe the leave me alones have just become more curious. You know,
Curiosity,
maybe the
right?
same people, but they've become more curious. Definitely. And Lisa, if I can just add on to this community discussion, you know, I think it's really important because what we find is there is such a greater need for community nowadays. And how Six Senses is working with it is not only opening our new social club, which is called Six Senses Place, and the first one will open in London, but we have a rollout of about 12 over the next 3 years. Because
so these are not with accommodations, Kent. These just are like
not
a day
accommodation
sort of
it will
environment.
be linked to a hotel, because we feel, you know, in order to get the local community to come in frequently and to feel like they belong, we wanted to create something special for them. And we didn't want them to feel like they were coming into a hotel that's all around the guest, you know. So we will be opening our first one in London at the end of the year, and that's fully into the local community, everything. And over and above that, you know, one of our core values is locally sensitive but globally sensible. And we're finding, you know, in all of our locations, by connecting with all the local organizations and employing local, etc., you know, we are discovering their rituals, like here in Montana, you know, there are different rituals that they follow, as well as what we do, like fire ceremonies and all the rest of it as well. So there's a really good mix there that comes about. But
so
correct.
What do you think was behind the guests becoming less leave me alone and more into the wellness? Do you think that was pandemic driven or isolation driven, or was it just a natural evolution as the wellness market is marketed so heavily around the world?
I believe it was mainly, and I don't have the data to support this, But I do believe it was predominantly the fact that people were in lockdown. They were thinking more of how badly would it affect them if they are COVID positive. What about these underlying health conditions? How could I live my life better? You know, all those discussions that we had in 2021. Because we're finding definitely, and as I'm able to spend more time, you know, in the front of the spa, at the front desks, etc., people are coming in and they're more adventurous. You know, before they would just book a massage because they felt intimidated by everything else. And when you're able to say, right, what exactly are you looking for? And they're saying, well, actually, I want to find out more about wellness. We now internally are really focused on getting all of our hosts in F&B and spa and everywhere to introduce the guest to one extra layer of the wellness journey, take them one more step. So in spa, you're not only going to recommend another treatment, you're going to recommend an alchemy bar experience or a wellness screening, or maybe the guest spoke about their diet, so we'll book them an appointment with the chef. And maybe it's the other way around. Maybe F&B saw a guest having a back problem and they're then going to introduce them more into what the spa can do. Our goal now is to ensure that all of our hosts who work, who are actively meeting the guest, take the guest one step further. Because it can be overwhelming, Lisa. You know, there's so much going on. So if they can all just take a guest one step further, we're getting there.
Well, that's excellent. I love that idea of taking them a little bit further. And it's not an all or nothing proposition, which scares people, right? But if you can be introduced a little bit at a time, then that's great. That opens up the market for us to what we can do. And that's a great segue, Kent, into the future. So I'm going to ask Sara and Emlyn to turn their cameras back on, and let's talk about where do we go now? We have the attention of the guest in a way that we never did. Everyone knows they need wellness. They know that spas and wellness facilities provide it. They are more adventurous, to your point, Kent. We just don't have enough people to service them. So that's a challenge. And how will we continue to evolve the market so that we stay relevant and yet we are not all doing the same thing? Let's face it. In 2019, you could look at a spa menu at any country in the world and it pretty much looked the same. We did facials, we did massages, we had a few experiences, they were priced the same. It was, you know, it was a little boring. And now we've been able to reinvent what we do. So where do we go from here? And by the way, as you may have noticed, attendees, we have enabled the chat. Sorry about the earlier snafu. We are Zoom rusty. And so please, if you have a question for any one of our panelists, go ahead and type it in. I'm not guaranteeing we'll get to it, but I will keep an eye on that. Emlyn, I'm going to ask you to explain the 8 Pathways white paper that Accor put out, and how does that play into your future marketing scheme?
Thank you. Yeah. So for those that don't know, we embarked on a 12-month, let's call it journey, that started off with a series of podcasts at the beginning of 2022 with people like Wim Hof and Sasha Celestial One, Harry Jameson, talking about the general landscape of wellness and well-being, what it means, and trying to connect the dots between things like sustainability, investment, equality, and understand the narrative of well-being and what it actually means within the current marketplace. That led on to a wellness tech startup event and some different other events, and finally a white paper which was released actually 2 weeks ago, which is online and available for everyone to download. And the idea was to really sort of break wellness and well-being down and say these are the sort of 8 or 9 key elements that people need to feel and have within their lives in order to create a wellness and well-being society, which we believe is going to be the next transformation for society, right? And I think probably 2 or 3 main points that came out of it that resonate with me. One was what we call the democratization of wellness, right? I think that this taps into what Sara and what Kent was saying is, you know, we use a lot of language that's very complicated. We make the accessibility to wellness very difficult in many cases. We sometimes equate wellness as being a $7,000 trip to Lanzarote for 1 week. That's the only way I can do wellness. It's not. It's the absolute opposite of that. It's the daily small steps of breathing, meditation, veganism, movement, walking, cold bathing that everyone can do. to make those sort of steps. And again, as Ken mentioned, adding on another layer, another little step towards improvement is really what we're all about. And so the idea of democratization, that it's accessible to everybody, is really, really important. I think the second one was about data and understanding, you know, technology right now, we talk about it in a negative way. We should actually flip the conversation around and say, data is really interesting for us because we can use the data that people are generating via their phone, via their Apple Watch, via whatever it's going to be, that everyone pretty much has now, right? Haven't been to a spa yet that says, please show me your Apple Watch the last 7 days for your activity of health.
I know, I love that.
Right? Why not? You know, why am I still using paper to do questionnaires and consultations when all the information is readily available on my mobile phone? And so we've got to take that data and then use it to hyper-personalize experiences for our guests with their permission, right? So this digital conversation, I think, needs to flip from being one of being a negative to being one of opportunity. And that's pretty much also in the white paper. You know, and also the link, which Six Senses very much embodies, is you can't be well without well-planned. Right, so sustainability and well-being are absolutely interlinked, you know, and I learned that from my wonderful time working with a company a number of years ago, and that still resonates even stronger today. So if your sustainable credentials within your well-being experience are not front and center, then younger generation is not going to come. That's 3 of the 8 things that are readily available in relation to that. I think that, talk about the future a little bit, and just to sort of touch on that, I think that for us, it's probably 2 or 3 things that are really important. Let's call it really basics, right? But for us, it's about less is more. We talked about menus, right? Treatment menus across the world, you know. We're more about doing 8 things really, really well than trying to do 35 things badly, right? If you look at a menu of experiences and you know your therapists, you know, and some can do this, some can't do that. Why not work and do the 8 things really, really beautifully? And do them. That's what your raison d'etre is. That's what your mission is, right? I'll give you an example of that. You know, Michelin restaurants work on a 4-4-4 menu. It's 4 starters, 4 main courses, 4 desserts, right? Because they know they can't achieve excellence unless they actually strip the menu down to its basic principles. And that's really, really interesting. That then allows you to spend more time with people, being hands-on and creating relationship and emotional connection, right? So your therapist will benefit from that. So less is more. In this new world, you can then charge a higher price for it. You can leverage it for a longer period of time. You can be confident about the time that you sell as being 2.5-hour minimums. I'll give one example of it. That it's a group that we're working with, and many of you will know. So the Guerlain Institute in Paris is a really well-renowned spa and experience. Guerlain's been around since 1939. People go, oh, it's old-fashioned and it's not new, and people want some different treatments. You know what? You can't get into that spa for a 12-week waiting period, and the minimum length of time you can spend in there is 3 hours. So a therapist has got 3 hours to build a relationship. You go into that experience, you don't really have a menu. You more have, as Mandarin has done for a number of years, a discussion about how you want to feel and where you want to get to, and they intuitively create that experience for you. That, for me, is what we're missing a little bit within the spa world right now. You know, I think we need to get back to some of those values of exceptional emotional connection and experience, for the benefit of our employees, who will do less treatments but more time with people, build more emotional connection, probably get tipped to a much higher degree, create more repeat custom. It becomes a virtuous circle. But it starts with the way that we think about our commercials, right? So it's a rambling answer that started off about the white paper, something else, right? But within that, I think, is this idea of do less, do it well. Execution is now the key. There are no secrets anymore in our industry, and IP is gone, right? It's about how you execute, and that's a differentiator that really going to make the difference for you. And that's completely in your control as a director of wellness, a director of spa, in what you set as your principles on a daily basis.
Well, and to your point about yield, I mean, you have to charge enough to make that worthwhile. If you're going to have less guests and less retail opportunity, we have to build that relationship so utilization goes up on return visit, and we're charging enough. So there's an equation here, right, that we need to keep an eye on?
Well, there's 2 equations. I think one is that embrace technology and embrace it in a way to create higher yields, right? But don't jam it down people's throats that don't want it, number one, right? So I think that, you know, people now, I think, expect from facial and certainly body treatments tangible results, and that can be within your control. There's an investment there on a capex side, but the returns are really easy to see, right? So you can be charging and leveraging that to a higher degree. But I think that you ask the question, what's the value of a 2.5-hour human to human engagement?
It's not priceless.
It's not $99, that I know. right? Because if you think about what people, think about the value of an incredibly intuitive 2.5 hour emotional engaged experience where you're completely pampered, where your needs and resources are catered to, you walk out feeling wonderfully refreshed. That is not a $199 experience, right? That's a lot more experience. And I think that this idea of human-to-human interaction, which is being lost in society, is going to create a lot more value for human-to-human interaction. And where do you get the best human-to-human interaction? In spa and well-being, right? So I think that our ability to be able to create experience, emotional connection, and else is a matter of confidence. And it goes back to the original point of, we don't sell treatments, we sell engagement, we sell results, we sell emotional connection, and that has got value, right? That's really where the value is, and that's where you need to be pitching yourself through your marketing, your communications, and your thought process.
Well said, but really good, Emlyn.
I had my coffee today, as you can see.
Yeah, no, I love it. He's
full of beans.
Sara, you know, you build on that with your experiences that you're known for in the spa within a hotel. Emlyn,
Yes.
don't go far. And but do you find that there are issues with language or allowing the therapist to really connect with the guest in that hotel environment for a longer period?
I mean, we're quite fortunate in that we're a resort hotel, so the average lengths of stay are between 5 to 7 days. Sometimes between Christmas and New Year, it can be up to 2 weeks. So the therapists have that potential to build a lot more connections with the guests than, for example, someone that was in a city hotel. So we're very fortunate in that respect. But I think, yeah, I think we tend to try and not sell 1 hour treatments, as Emlyn was saying. We're not in the business of like 1 in, 1 out, 1 in, 1 out. We're in the business of creating that emotional engagement and those experiences with our guests. So we don't actually, on our treatment menu, we don't actually advertise that we're doing 60-minute appointments. So all of our appointments range from 90 minutes plus. So the therapists have that time.
Wow.
To have the engagement with the guests rather than just 60 minutes, because we all know once we get on the couch and we ever have a 60-minute treatment, it's just like, damn, I wish I'd booked 90 or more. But it's also, it's creating that connection as soon as the guest walks into your spa, even before that, creating that experience when they're calling on the phone and creating that engagement with them, even through email or whatever communication tools that you have to bring your guests to the spa. And I think that's where your experience starts. And then to follow on with that, your consultation, when they come in, trying to find out what their needs are and so forth, and really picking up on, I think what we do particularly well at is picking up on these golden nuggets. So looking at like trigger words that your guest is potentially, I'm here for an anniversary, or, I'm a really long flight, and so on and so forth, and picking up on these details where then when they go up to their treatment, we're calling F&B, hey, can you send this to their room because they're jet lagged, or so on and so forth. And again, it's creating not only just spa experience, but taking it that much further throughout their whole day, when even if they are staying with you for overnight or for 2 days, you've created that memorable experience where they're leaving just saying, wow, that was completely different. And then that's how you also then create those experiences with your guests, and you get them to come back.
Well, and they do. Anyone who's ever experienced a Mandarin Oriental stay or treatment can say for sure it's one of the top things you could do in wellness.
Yeah.
Kent, tell us about your innovation committees at Six Senses. And you were bought by IHG. You have a bigger parent now, and I've asked you how is that fitting this small culture into the bigger company? But it sounds like it's been very positive.
Sure. Well, we're in our third year, coming up to the fourth. It definitely has been interesting. Luckily, IHG have, made sure that they leave us to do what we do well, and we go to them for what they do well. So a lot of our back of house is now IHG, procurement, legal, all those issues, wonderful. IHG can do, and they have supported us full on in making sure that we don't lose our identity. And, if we look at sustainability, of course, we're all there, and we've been really well supported by them and making sure that what we're doing is becoming more well known and that we can do more. They've given us more resources, but also regarding wellness, and they fully support our wellness innovation team, which we call the WIT team, W-I-T. And that is headed by Anna Burstum, who is one of the wellness pioneers around the globe. And it's now, that team's about 3 or 4 full-time people, you know, that are on the wellness innovation team to keep us ahead of where we need to be. You know, in 6 senses, we have eat, we have sleep, we have grow, we have, you know, all multiple different programs, but they are looking ahead because we believe that wellness is always evolving, and therefore they're always looking ahead. But IHG, they own 6,000, or they're almost at 6,000 hotels globally. And similar to Accor, the luxury and lifestyle component of that is about, we're about 10% of the total of the hotels. But we proudly sit on top of all their brands. And so that working together has gone very well. Points that, if I have time, I just want to quickly add, is
Sure.
that we also find in today's wellness operation that, you know, where we maybe had 1 local trainer per spa before, we'll now have 2 or 3 so that they can focus on different areas. You know, because all too often your traditional local trainer is your spa treatments, and your wellness practitioner will be looking after your wellness interaction and how that's coming alive. But to attract and to keep our hosts happy and to attract more, we also are creating positions like head of alchemy bar development. You know, so we'll have a person who can lead the region in the alchemy bar or in ceremonies and rituals. So we're providing more levels in our spa and wellness in order to attract people who have that as an interest, as well as to keep them motivated, and that way give the guest something extra special.
Well, that's definitely the advantage, right, of being part of a bigger company. There's a longer career path.
Definitely.
We could spend another hour talking about staffing, and we don't have time. But in response to staffing challenges that we're all facing, and by the way, on our survey, it was the #1 challenge for everyone, staffing globally. It's not any one of you, it's not any sector, and it's not just spa and wellness. Nobody wants to come to work. So let's talk about how we move forward in terms of recovery, biohacking, bringing in services that maybe don't have a labor component. We've had a few questions about how we keep our costs down, and that's certainly a way. We have about 6 minutes left. Who would like to weigh in on that? Emlyn, I could see him ready.
It's one of the pillars of our future thought process. It's called recovery, and had a conversation. Maybe they're not the right word in the States, but the idea of using technology to help and aid you recovery as an athlete is now permeating into our normal life. So services like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, IV therapy, drainage with Normatec boots, hyper-ice use, and so on and so forth, we see as an opportunity to increase yield, right? Increase experience, create greater packages and programs that are based around a circuit of activity. And I think a great example of that, if you're looking for references within the marketplace, look at Remedy Social Wellness in New York and Los Angeles. It's creating a social club around wellness and well-being. Kent's alluded to that with the 6 Senses Place location is going to bring. I think more of that's going to be happen. Why do we like things like that? Well, cryotherapy is $75 for a 15-minute experience. It doesn't require a certain level of labor. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, you can have 1 person servicing 4 people within a hard shell element, right? It works. So it works from a yield and revenue perspective. So when we're looking at new spas and new designs, that's certainly a direction that we want to be going into.
Great. That's so interesting, Emlyn. Kent, can you weigh in a little bit on the biohacking bit for sure?
Sure. I'm watching with time as well. Biohacking is becoming a very big component of our business. Here in 6 Senses Crown Montana, we've launched our first biohacking recovery lounge. You know, the word biohacking can also be quite off-putting and intimidating to your curious member. The hardcore will be fine to go with it. So we've called it a recovery lounge here, where we have, you know, your red light, your cryo, your binary beats, your venom, all the different things, you know, that are available. Because again, if a guest is coming into the hotel and they've just got pains, it's a great way to introduce them, to take them one step further, apart from the yield development, etc. But the other thing that is working for us is third-party partnership. Here, I'm talking a lot about Crans-Montana because I'm here, but Crans-Montana also has a great private medical clinic that offers incredible services. And the ones that we agree on, you know, IV and all the rest, we're doing a partnership with them where they will come for 1 day a week into our spa environment, and we'll promote the services that they're offering. Because that way, in Ibiza, we have a similar arrangement with the local clinic there. It also helps your manning. You know, we can see if it becomes really popular, well, then maybe we look at how we develop it further. But in order to provide it for the guest, we're doing quite a few joint partnerships.
Sara, you do the same, right? I mean, I know that you have a partnership for IV drips at Mandarin. It has gone very well because I interviewed you for, I think, a story in Spa Business about it. So what I want to ask now in closing is, do you think that adding these services or bringing in third-party vendors dilutes your brand at all, or the experience for the guest? I mean, how are we going to make sure that we deliver the yields we need and yet keep our brand standards high? Could I have just a closing comment on that from each of you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start as my microphone is on. I mean, for us, it's all about, again, it's all about research, doing your research on who your best brand partner is going to be. And I think that's the people behind it. It's always the people behind it, the technology behind it. We partner with the Elixir Clinic, which is one of the best known in Dubai. They do IVs, they do colonic irrigation, they do massive amount of services. And that actually works really well for us. Number one, for manning, but also it takes pressure off our manning, but also to increase room utilization. So it's a great way to, even if you have a smaller space, just to say, okay, what can we do within that space? There's no equipment really that we need to provide. They provide everything, and it's an hour and a half to 2 hours, and it's a fantastic guest experience, and I would highly recommend it.
Great.
Good. From Success's side, you know, we also do our research. We make sure that we have the right third party that is right for our guest. But there's a lot of monitoring that goes on as well. You know, we rely on our wellness directors and our spa managers to really ensure that they're delivering what the guest will expect. And we also let the guest know, you know, this is a third party. It's not disguised as Success's. They have their branding, they know that this is a third party, and not because we want to not deliver what the guest might expect from a Success that might be different, but because it's an open book.
Sure, that's the way to approach it.
It works for us, yeah.
Emlyn, closing words.
Agree. Well-vetted collaboration, I think, is the future of brands, not the detriment to brand. If you look at the outside of our industry, with Gucci popping up with North Face and with Adidas and Balenciaga doing things with the Simpsons, that's all part of what fashion is doing. And so you can strengthen your brand through collaboration and brand partnership. You shouldn't fear it, you should embrace it. And the power of those two things together creates more reach, more social media, more anything else. And the expertise of delivery. So essentially, Sara's become a destination well-being location by partnering with a great operator in the medical spa business. That's fantastic for the Mandarin Oriental and fantastic for the overall hotel. So nothing to be afraid of.
Thank you again all for your words. Like, so much good content. I wish we could talk longer, but you have busy lives and I need to let you go. I think it's really good to listen to these staffing ideas, because the problems we have are not going away. Next week, I do think that we will start to see people come back to work. I'm seeing a little bit in the US, a little bit of an increase in applicants. but it's not going to be what it was. We need to be creative and think about how we drive revenue going forward. So thank you again to all of my panelists so much for joining. Let me put up our slide about our events for the rest of this year. Please reach out to one of our professionals, Lucy, Monica, Stephen, if you'd like to join. And thank you again to everyone for being here. I wish you a very successful 2023. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye-bye.